Hi everyone. Let's wait and see who comes on this live. I've never been live. I don't know what all these buttons do. Hey John. What do all these buttons do? Can you hear me? I'm assuming that's a yes. Welcome to Mental Health Monday. Hi everyone who's joining in. It is 4 p.m. on Monday. I think it is a nice day. I haven't been outside yet. I don't know if I'll get outside today actually. But hi, welcome to Mental Health Monday. My name is Christina Broderick. I'm going to give it a little bit of time for some people to join in. But feel free to give me a wave, give me a hello, send some positive vibes, all that good stuff for us today on this Monday. I'm really excited to be able to start doing lives and doing Mental Health Mondays, especially during this time, and being able to share about what our theme of July is going to be, and what we have coming up. So please feel free to write some stuff. I am trying to figure out, oh my goodness, so many buttons. I don't know what's happening. Awesome. Hey Denise, hi, hello. Again, welcome to a Mental Health Monday. I am really excited to be able to do these mental health lives. Being able to provide the opportunity to have people ask questions, get questions answered, as relates to mental health topics. I am going to fix this for a second. Awesome. Cool. So, my name is Christina Broderick. I am the CEO and founder of IgniteEDU, where it is our purpose to work to make sure every student is able to learn, build, and strengthen their mental health foundation along their educational journey. We started Mental Health Mondays to provide a space for you guys to start off the week really strong, to be able to have the opportunity to get any questions that you have asked and answered as to the best of my abilities. So I just wanted to go over a little bit about who I am, why I do the work that I do, dive into what we'll be doing for the month of July, and then of course if there's any questions or anything, feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will answer them as they pop up. So I am a licensed social worker. I am here in the state of New Jersey, and I started my company a few years ago after working across the entire education spectrum. I've worked in elementary school, middle school, high school, and university. And I noticed that there was a consistent gap that existed as it relates to student mental health. And what I mean by that is that students aren't often taught basic mental health strategies and skills. It tends to be more of a reactive approach, meaning that we usually wait for students to have issues and to have problems before we then address them or give them some strategies and give them some tips. So subsequently, what ends up happening when we do that is that students end up having really hard times in school. They develop really unhealthy coping skills to battle whatever it is that's going on. And it's a lot harder to undo a lot of those learned behaviors than it is to set students up from success from the beginning. So that is why I developed the company IgniteEDU to work on infusing the education system with mental health. At IgniteEDU, we use what's called a 3C approach of content, connection, and creation. So we provide the content, so we help to increase the general knowledge base as it relates to mental health, the connection to the content through our courses, workshops, trainings, etc. But lastly, is the biggest one is our last C, which is the creation. So we work directly with students, families, organizations to create sustainable mental health plans for long-term use. So that is, in a nutshell, a little bit about IgniteEDU and why I do the work that I do. I'm also a psychotherapist. I work in private practice as well. I'm also an avid orca lover and an avid French fry consumer. So those are my two big things that I'm obsessed with. And as I mentioned, we started Mental Health Mondays because we wanted us to give you guys an opportunity to start your week off with some strategies, some tips, some things to know as it relates to mental health. So for our theme, so for July is National Minority Mental Health Month. And it was created in 2008 with the goal of helping to improve access to mental health treatment and services and promote public awareness about mental illness, especially as it relates to the minority communities. As you may or may not know, there are discrepancies in terms of the quality of care as it relates to minorities. And so it's very important this month that we not only talk a lot about mental health and the stigmas and the challenges and the barriers that exist still, but then what can we do, right? How can we move the conversation forward? How can we break down these barriers? How can we work with each other so that we can, as a community, see improvements with our mental health? So that is what we're going to be talking a lot about this month for July. We're going to be talking about some facts, so it's important to be knowledgeable, so giving out facts, information as it relates to mental health within the minority communities, but then also problem solving, right? How do we actually now change the narrative? What does this look like for us in these communities? We'll be talking a lot about, and I'm just looking at my notes so I don't forget anything. We're talking about a lot about what's happening right now with the current injustices, the police brutalities, right, the systemic oppressions that continue to exist. But then within that, right, as we are fighting these fights, how do we make sure that we're taking time for ourselves? How does it look like for us to show up as our best selves so that we can continue to move the needle forward as it relates to breaking down these oppressive systems that do exist? So I'm really excited for July. I'm excited for all the things that we're going to talk about as it relates to minority mental health. Hey, Shy. Hey, girl. About minority mental health. Again, talking about stress reduction, how to find moments of joy, self-care, stress responses, and all that kind of stuff. Because it looks different, right? There's no blanketed approach as it relates to like how does it look like when we stress, or how do we approach stress and things like that. So becoming self-aware, right? Becoming aware of what your stress responses are, aware of what this may look like depending on maybe culture, depending on the different societal things that exist. So it's really important for us to also bring light to those as well. So we're talking about all of that in July, whether it's through our Instagram post, through our blog post, through our newsletter, etc. So not just giving out that content, right? The 3 C's, the content, but also how are we connecting the content? How are you guys giving you guys strategies and tips? How are we making sure that you guys are creating some wellness plans for yourself over this month? Whether that is just becoming more informed, whether it's making some appointments, talking to other people, taking care of yourself, etc. So to start, one thing that is important is to understand positive psychology. So in the work that I do with students, when we talk about mindsets, we talk about things that happen automatically within our minds that we tend to not have control over all of the time as it relates to, for example, our negative thinking and our negative thoughts. So when I was working with my students over this past Saturday, we talked about the negativity bias, right? About how we're predispositioned to be more negative in our minds, but then also how we have to do extra work to combat that negativity bias. So that's what we talked a lot about this past Saturday with our students. But again, it's not just about the being aware, right? We know that it takes a lot of work to combat this negativity bias. What do we do? Well, that's when we start using positive psychology. So I introduce students to positive psychology, and particularly the PERMA model. And the PERMA model, PERMA, each letter stands for a different part that we need to attend to in our lives ultimately so that we can become more happier, feel more fulfilled, etc. So for example, P stands for positive emotions, right? Making sure that we're having enough positive emotions in our life. I got distracted. Yes, PRLI, you're waving hi. Paul Rowe students, hey girl. E stands for engagement, so making sure that you are having moments of true engagement. So I learned that sometimes when people hear that, they think it means that you have to be a part of a club or part of a hobby. We're thinking about being engaged. It means just that you're finding times in your days to really be lost in something, right? It could be an activity like painting, or it can just be moments of connection. So if you're with families, if you're with friends, how are you making sure that you are attuning to the present time, right? You're really getting engaged into what it is, and you're really taking in the joy in that space, right? And being intentional about it. So how are we taking the intentional time to find out what truly brings us joy and peace, and then making sure that we can just do that as much as possible, right? Not just every once in a while, but as much as possible. How are we making sure that we are doing things that we really enjoy? So that is E. So we went over P, which is positive emotions. So how are we making sure that we have more positive emotions than negative emotions in our spaces? E for engagement. How are we having things that we're doing frequently that keep us engaged, where we lose track of time and we're really involved into whatever it is that we are doing? R, even though it starts with a P, but R for PERMA stands for relationships. So positive relationships. Looking at the people that we surround ourselves with, right? Especially now, there's a lot of, at least I find myself being in spaces sometimes where there are conversations that I am just emotionally not willing to have, despite whatever it is that's, going on. But making sure that we're surrounding ourselves with people that really bring us joy, right? That we want to spend time with. Hey, Kamantia. So that is what the third R, or the third letter is in PERMA. So P, positive emotions. How are we making sure that we're having enough positive emotions? E, engagement. How are we finding time to do things that we're truly engaged in and things that bring us joy and happiness? R stands for relationships. So really evaluating the relationships that we have around us. Second to last is M, which stands for meaning. So how are we doing things that connect us to the greater good? So that can either be something that's maybe religion based if you're very religious, but then also just something that's connected to a larger community. It can be volunteer, it can just be conversations and experiences, but we all as humans want to be connected to something bigger, right? My favorite guiding philosophy comes from an African proverb called Ubuntu, and it means I am because you are, my humanity is tied to yours. So a lot of the work, I'm a very strong believer of connection, and there's tons of research that shows that when we feel connected to each other, feel connected to a cause, feel connected to a higher purpose, again, that doesn't have to be religion, that could just be something like community, that we do tend to feel happier. So when we're thinking about things that bring us happiness, meaning, having things that bring us meaning is also really important. So recap again, PERMA, we're going over positive psychology for those who just joined in. So P stands for positive emotion. E stands for engagement, so things that you are truly engaged in and making sure that you are being mindful of those times. R stands for relationships, so positive relationships and making sure the people that you are surrounding yourself with ultimately bring you peace and joy and happiness. M stands for meaning, so making sure the things that we're doing actually are bringing us meaning, or that's helping us feel connected to a greater purpose. And then last is A, is for accomplishment, right? No one wants to move through life feeling unaccomplished. The issue that I've been finding is that people tend to think that A, and we think of accomplishments for A, has to be something that's tied to like a career or tied to this like big goals that we need to flex on Instagram about, apparently. But it's how are we finding accomplishment in all the other spaces, right? So a few weeks back, maybe like a month or two at this point, I did like a detox. And that detox was hard. I know Kamanti's on here. She can tell you that the text messages that I would send, if you followed my personal Instagram, you saw a lot of the videos or the pictures of the smoothies. It was like a green smoothie detox. And that ish was hard. It was just smoothies twice a day and then like a clean dinner or whatever. But for me, it was a very big adjustment of being able to change my eating styles, my eating habits to be able to do this cleanse. It was only 10 days. But 10 days is a long time. I'm saying only, but it was a very long time. By day like 6, I was like, I'm done. Hey, I made it 6 days. This is great. But then I pushed myself to keep going, right? I finished out the 10 days. And that was a true accomplishment. That was an accomplishment because that was me there were so many smaller things that I did in order to make it to those 10 days, right? To kind of get over that hurdle. Hey, Brett. To get over that mental hurdle of being able to finish out those 10 days. So sometimes for us, especially when thinking of like mental health and feeling positive, we have to make sure that we're taking the intentional time to reflect on that last piece, on accomplishment, because there are tons of things that we are probably doing every single day that we think are not an accomplishment because we are expecting accomplishment to mean these larger things, but they don't have to. They can mean the smaller, minute things that are happening every single day, right? So again, to recap, thinking of positive psychology, and then for the ones who are joining in, we're talking about the theme for July is that we're going to talk about minority mental health because July is Minority Mental Health Month. So not just in terms of bringing awareness to the inequality of care that exists within minority communities, particularly around mental health. So we're going to be giving out some stats, some information, etc. But also what to do, right? What are things that we can be doing to make sure that we are changing what is happening within our communities, especially as it relates to mental health. And in particular, how do we make sure that we are our best selves so that we can continue showing up for these causes that are extremely important for our communities. So we were going through positive psychology and talking about the PERMA model. So PERMA stands for P for positive emotions, E for engagement, things that we are engaged in, and being able to find whatever it is that really brings us joy and happiness and peace, and doing that as much as possible. R for relationships, the positive relationships that we have in our lives. M for meaning, so making sure that we are connected to something greater than ourselves. Again, that can just mean community, but it can also mean something religious. And then last is A, so making sure that we are taking note of the accomplishments that we have. In that, making sure that you're working towards something, right? That we are taking charge of our life. We're not just letting life happen to us, that we are taking charge, we're making some goals, we have things that we want to work towards, big or small, and then recognizing and celebrating those small wins. So that is what I had for today for our first Mental Health Monday. Just wanted to open it up, let you guys know that we'll be doing this every single Monday at 4 o'clock, just giving you a space to get some of your questions answered if you have any questions about mental health, or just to learn some tips, learn some strategies as well. These videos will be saved and reposted in case you want to rewatch them or pass them along, have a friend join in and watch with you, etc. But I am so excited to be able to do these Mental Health Mondays. If you have any questions, you can write them now, but also feel free to slide in a DM. You know, I monitor the DMs. Our intern Denise monitors the DMs as well. But we're also here. We want to be accessible. We don't want there, of course, to be any more barriers that exist for students or anybody to get their questions answered about mental health. So I hope this was informative. I hope you guys learned something. I know when I talked with my students, they really enjoyed talking about PERMA. A lot of them realized that they found some areas that they actually needed to do some work on in their life, whether it's about engagement or they needed to assess some relationships, like family, right? You talk about what does that mean? Or they talked about how do you know if you have a positive or negative relationship? And I said, you know, trust your intuition. Are you happy to talk to this person when they show up in your inbox? Or are you rolling your eyes when they show up in your inbox, right? And that is your key indicator as to whether or not that's a positive relationship. We talked about boundaries, examples, things like that. So I think the PERMA model is a good starting point because we want to make sure we understand ways to start bringing positivity into our lives. These past few months have been very challenging, not just for the world, but especially the Black community. So making sure that we're able to check in with ourselves and give ourselves some love so that we can continue to show up for these movements are extremely important. So again, I thank you so much for coming and joining in on our Mental Health Monday. I'll stick around if you guys have any questions or anything like that. But I'm really excited and I hope to see you guys next week on next Monday. You're welcome. Come on, see ya. Bye.